Hello, Tom the Wedner, the conversationalist. How's everybody tonight? Got a got a special one tonight. Something to talk about. We're going to answer some emails from people asking questions about my life and timelines and things like that. I know that I'm always saying that's another story, so we're going to try to cover a few of those. People have written back and say, "Well, I want to know about that," or "I want to know about this." So this is a time for me to clean up a little bit about myself, and maybe we'll even introduce you to the wizard. Anyway, let's like, subscribe, comment, share. Make sure the bell is up so you know when I'm on the air. You can come over and yell at me. It'd be a lot of fun. Well, let's get through all the people that we support, like St. Jude Children's Hospital. Whole lot of years, like 74 years worth of St. Jude. Started from nothing, and now it's this major campus. It went from 80% of the children coming in with cancer alone. This isn't all the other disease, but 80% were dying. Now only 20% died. Because, and I say only, isn't that terrible? I say only. But think about it. How many children are being saved? And they're working on other diseases now because, they're closing in on that last 20%. So thank God for St. Jude. Oh, let's talk about our friends over at Aortic Hope, Karen and the rest of the bunch. Great organization. Uh, I hope you guys have looked up, done a little diving on aortic disease and what it does to people. It just crushes you. This is a disease that crushes you. It takes away who you are, everything from your job to your personality. Take it from somebody who lived in a recliner for 3 years and then had to fight for the next 5 or 6 years to get surgeries and tests and doctors and whatever else. And I say me, it was mostly my wife, but that's another story. Oh, you can actually watch her story. Isn't that funny? Should remember that. So Aortic Hope, go over there and click on Aaron Kavanaugh Nowetner and Survivor series, and you can see the Celtic Witch or what she wants you to see. So we also have PAD, way to the heart. I mean, let's face it, most people are going to suffer this arterial venal collapse, whatever you want to call it. Most people with diabetes have it. A lot of people with heart problems have it. You got to know about this stuff. If you don't know about this stuff and you don't bring it up to your doctor, or you find a doctor that knows more than you do about it, you're doing yourself a disservice. Kim is a great presence on the podcast. They have great doctors. Please spend some time in your life and uh, sign on with these people. Then the last one, we're going to talk about concert benefits. Dun, 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 rock from the heart. Like I said, I'm not going to be at the first one, but I will be there on the second one. I got my rooms booked, got my airfare gone. I mean, we are hooked up. So those are the people we support. Those are the people that we enjoy being referenced to. In other words, piggybacking on them and hoping I'm doing something good for them. Otherwise, I'm just beating my head against the wall. All right, so let's start. Got my book. Dun, 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 dun. All the high parts. Got all the emails stacked up here with highlighter all over it. So gonna organize me just a little bit. Don't expect too much. Anyway, uh, yes, I was born in 1951. That makes me 73 years old. For Richmond, uh, lived on Carroll Street in Brooklyn. Grandparents were from Italy. Um, Owned a grocery store. Well, a push cart first, then a grocery store, and then they opened up a restaurant. So they owned a brownstone and there was 5 generations. We had 5 floors, so there was 5 generations. You know, my aunts and uncles and cousins, and my grandparents lived on the very first floor, so it was easy for them to get in and out of. But Uncle Joe and his wife and kids lived up on the top floor because they were the they were the youngest and the sprayest, I guess. So it was just a communal way of living. It's what they did in Europe, so they brought it here to America. I know now everybody wants their own $2 billion high-rise mansion or condo or whatever they want, but it was a necessity. And if you didn't get in the shower at the right time, you showered with cold water. It was just a fact of life. Well, you got to figure out, you have 5 families, and I mean families. They had 4 and 5 kids, you know. I always had Uncle Lou or Uncle Tony or Bada Bing, staying over. So you had another face to feed and somebody else to contribute to the mess. But it was a good way to live because there was always somebody in the house. I mean, whatever trouble I got into or whenever I got hurt, there was always somebody there to take care of you. I was born with a S curve in my spine. I know that it's called certain diseases, and it's very fixable now. They do the surgery in utero, which is like a miracle to me. But at the time, they didn't have any of that. So they either open up your back and put rods in, or they put this uh, traction on you. It's a harness that goes up around your chest and under your arms and around your hips and go down to your feet. And they literally, you lay on your bed and you're locked up like you're on something that stretches people, some, Catholic Renaissance torture device. uh, but slowly but surely, over the course of my first 4 years of life, they got me to stretch out, and I did make the tallest. I tell everybody I was 5'11", but actually I was only 5'10". But I even lied on my state ID. So I wanted to be 6 foot tall, and 5'10" sounded like eh. So I always told everybody 5'11", but I don't think I was fooling everybody because basically you have to understand I look like a fire plug. Got these big, huge arms, those things that stick out the bottom. I got absolutely no neck. I have a little bit of a turkey neck now, but that's because I've lost so much weight. But I didn't have a neck. So I think it was Eddie Ryan, a good friend of mine who went into the Secret Service after high school. He's the one that named me that, no neck, the hydrant boy. And that stuck with me for a lot of years. But I did stretch out and, good enough to fool many doctors in my past experiences and jobs. Anybody can stand straight for 5 minutes. That was my theory. Oh, gosh, I was raised in a neighborhood, 2 streets of Italians, and on the north side was Jewish. Half of them were Hasidic, and half of them were Orthodox on the block. And then there was the Polish, and then the Puerto Ricans and the Germans. That's all north. If you're going south from Carroll Street, everybody there was, there was like 4 streets of African Americans, as we called them back then, and Spanish Americans. And then there was Little Korea, which was a great place to go get something to eat real late at night. I mean, I'm talking about like 4 o'clock in the morning, like late at night. That's because we were in church praying so long after work. We'd get out about 12 and we'd go to church, say the rosary. At least that's what I told my mother. Ran with a good group of guys. There was 5 of us. We met in grade school. We stayed friends. They've all died off now, but if they were alive, we'd still be friends. It's tough being the last of that group of people. But I say their names every year at New Year's, and I say their names on their birthday because the rule is if nobody says your name, you're really gone. But if somebody says your name, you're never really gone. So it's a little service I do for these maniacs I ran with. Out of a lark, I got a job with the Department of Corrections. A friend of mine, Ed Edwards, when told me I'm getting on the bus. We were talking. I said, "Where are you going?" He was getting on the bus. He was giving the corrections officer test at this high school. I said, "Is it? Did you have to file paperwork to get?" And he says, "No, it's a walk-in test." So I said, "Well, I got nothing to do. I'll go." And I took the test and aced it. How that happened, I don't know. Maybe it was luck of the draw. So that's how I got into law enforcement. I was a correctional officer, then a sergeant. And just before I got out, I was on the lieutenant's list. But that was when affirmative action was happening. So if you're a minority or a woman, you got so many points. And so I probably would have never made lieutenant because they're skipping people over. It wasn't primarily your dates of service and your knowledge. It was about who you are and what you are. Uh, they could get up as many as 24 points. That's a hell of a starting block. But that's another story. I never felt like it was oppressing me. I just thought of it as an annoyance. Um, Stayed in it for 11 years with the state of New Jersey. Did some federal time in the federal prison system. I did some time in other agencies, mostly contract work. Um, I learned my life skills from Lou's Tavern. You'll love this. Lou's Tavern was this place, had all these glass blocks in the front, this big, thick glass blocks. I don't know if you've ever seen them. Back in the 50s and 60s, even the 70s, it was an architectural detail. They're like 6x6 glass blocks. I I thought they were cool, but my mother said they were real hard to keep clean, and she had them all taken out of the brownstone. So Lou's Bar was this place was you got to remember that everybody fought in World War II. This is the 50s and 60s, so these guys love to hang out. They get out of work 4 or 4:30. They don't eat until 6:30, 7 o'clock. So they got to have a place to hang out, and Lou's was a neighborhood place to hang out. It was always spotlessly clean bar with never any fights in it. Lou was a made man who was when I knew him, when I was 12, he was in his 80s already. And then I stayed with him until I was 19, working for him part time, learning the ropes, as he would say. Hey, boy, come over here. Keep your mouth shut. Learning the ropes. And so I got a lot of my life skills hanging there. I was a bar back, and then I was the mopper, and then finally I started delivering drinks. And then I got to work in the back room, which was, the sacred place where all the poker games went on, and they had their separate bar and kitchen. So, you keep your mouth shut and your ears open, you get to know a lot of things. Some things you don't want to know. And somewhere around 18 or 19, I decided there was a better way to make a living than joining these no-neck Italian Joey Bag of Donuts people. I felt like if I joined them, I would not go anywhere in life because I wasn't full-blooded Italian, so I couldn't be a made man. So therefore, I would be relegated to be a soldier the rest of my life, and that wasn't who I was. So I talked to Lou one day, and he said, "Hey, You gave it a shot. You gave it longer than most people. I respect that. So I would go ahead. The only thing better he could have said to me was that he was proud of me. But when he said he respected me, I thought that was real good. Oh, gosh. I went out in the world, you know, as everybody does after high school. I went to Haight-Ashbury in California for 9 months. It was a great time. We enjoyed it. It was all 5 of us. It was after Woodstock. We just packed up and went. It was just one of those things that when you're young, if you have an impulse, do it. I mean, if the impulse is to kill somebody or run somebody over or do something nasty, don't do it. But I'm saying when you're young and you have money in your pocket like I had and no attachments, man, get out there and fly. You know, this is your time to really live. And now, everybody that I knew was married by 24. Now people don't get married till they're in their 40s. So if you're focusing on your career more than your life between, let's say, 20 years old and 40 years old, you're screwed. Take it from somebody who worked his life away. I would have devoted much more time to fun. I used to have this thing. I'd go home and just yell at the top of my lungs. Road trip, everybody's got an hour to get their stuff together. I got 3 days, or I got 4 days. And that meant everybody, they stuff things in a suitcase or a backpack or my duffel bags, and we dropped them in the car, and we take a vote on whether we're going north, south, east, or west. I think my wife rigged it because she wanted to go to always wanted to go to the ocean, so she always voted that way. So, but it was a good life. I mean, I came out in the 70s, early 70s, and then I swear to God, everything I touched all the way to the 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, turned to gold. It was a unique time in American history. It was like the economy was just going hand over fist. You couldn't do anything wrong. I mean, you picked up a twig and stuck it in the ground, and 5 years later, you had an orchard. It was just that magical time when everybody was working for the same thing. You were working for your family. You were putting in the hours, whether you liked your job or not. You didn't, that wasn't important. It was about the amount of money you can make. And a lot of times, my generation, the boomers, we were raised by the greatest generation than they were, but they didn't have a clue how to raise children. Dr. Spock wasn't around. He didn't have his book out yet. And they came back from war, and all they knew about was war. And the wives had picked up jobs while they were gone. So now the women are a little bit more independent than what they remembered. So that was a little bit of a clashing and learning. I remember my parents clashing over that a lot growing up, but they always seemed to stick together. They were in it for the long haul. I very much enjoyed my time in law enforcement. Didn't enjoy all the conflicts and problems it caused in my life, but you know, it's what you look back and hindsight's 2020, right? Everybody knows what the hell you should have done rather than what you did. So it's like 20 after, so I'm like 4 minutes into this. I should say like and subscribe. You know, make a comment. I love these comments. I have 17. I'm like, man, this is great stuff. And I'll get specific once we do our commercial. Share. Make sure the bell's in the right position. Remember St. Jude and aortic hope, PAD, way to the heart, and the rack and rabbin, knock 'em out fundraiser, rocking from the heart. All right. So let's get back to this. Let's get to the specifics because I just gave you the general layout. Uh, did I know how to use a gun, and when's the earliest I ever used one? Uh, Joey Intenzo would take me to his farm in Davenport, New York. It's right outside of Cooperstown, New York, where the Baseball Hall of Fame is. He had a big farm up there. He was a bricklayer, and that was where I first shot my first gun. It was a 22, and I couldn't hit a 60-foot barn. I was so bad. I was afraid of it. I never had a gun in my hand, and even though it was just a 22 and it just made a cracking sound, it still petrified me. So it took me a whole summer to get over it because he told me I could take it anytime I wanted because he, gave me the safety rules. And it was a long time before I'd even touch it when he wasn't around. So that was my progression with firearms. Not what not what anybody would think nowadays with my talents of a firearm, but in the beginning I was afraid of it. And it was okay to be afraid of it. Like my dad said, once it's out, that bullet's out of the barrel, your decision making's over. So that was that. The next thing is I've had two wives, and the first one, uh, high school sweetheart that came back into my life, and over the next 22 years, we had two sons, actually three sons. Sorry about that, Tommy. Three sons, and she just got crazier and crazier, and higher education she got even more crazy. She got, got her master's degree in being an RN, and she was going for her PhD. I don't think she's ever completed it, but I think just the pressure of working and going to school just drove her nuts. So we parted ways, and I was fully intending. This is what I tell you. I was fully intending going and buying a side of a mountain with a cave in it and go and climbing in on it because I just, first off, I didn't think I'd ever get divorced. That was never even mentioned. Then, because it was such a rough time, I didn't want to do it with anybody, women, men, golf courts. I just, I was going to crawl into a cave and just pull a rock over. Because I guess what my way to deal with these big transitions in my life is to blindly walk through them. If you can understand that, I don't get, I'm already invested so much that I can't get crazy about it going out the door. I mean, the decision's already been made, just do it. That might sound a little cold and callous, but every time there's been a bad situation in my life, I just worked through it. I just didn't accept what it was. I looked down a little bit. I looked for a light. I call it a light and just walked towards the light until things got better. And it works for me. Maybe that little ditty can work for you. That you focus on the future, not the tragedy at hand. I had great opportunities going through law enforcement, but it wasn't for me again. Just I thought it was going to be to fit my personality type. I passed the psych exam, which to this day I don't know how that worked, and didn't even get called back for a second examination. A lot of guys got called back for a second. I got passed on the first one. Maybe it was that $50 I handed him. No. That's another story. So my grandmother had a restaurant. My grandfather had the grocery store. Knew the restaurant industry because I always worked it Even as a young child, everybody was expected to work it. I'd rather sweep up the grocery store than work in the kitchen, but that's another story. It's easier to be the low guy on the totem pole than be somebody who's expected to know stuff. There's a life lesson for you. When you get your corner office, hide. 80% of the Twitter hid for what? Almost 11, no, 14 years before they got somebody could walk in and said, wait a minute, 80% of you guys aren't doing anything. So it catches up. Fortunately, it never caught up with me. I've always owned my own bars and restaurants and taverns. We owned a restaurant in Tennessee. Uh, we lived in Tennessee for 7 years. I started to get sick, so had to come back to New York State where there was good medical care. And 13 years ago, I had a life changing. I was what they call a CEC, certified executive chef. Um, and I had aortic dissection and aneurysms and false lumens and everything else in this jumble of aortic disease. And because of my personality, because I was a volunteer fireman EMT, I knew what was going on with my body. It wasn't a heart attack. The pain didn't stay. It was transitory. I remember that much. The rest of it's kind of a fog because they kept me hyped up on morphine and fentanyl for 17 days. You can watch my video to get the details, but I survived 17 days in this medical desert, and then about 35 to 39 days. I don't have any firsthand knowledge of it. I was down in New York, Long Island, at a hospital with a researcher. He was a doctor, but he had his PhD in research, and he was researching aortic dissections at that time and used the stents. It was a burgeoning field then. So basically, I didn't get surgery for 3 years. I couldn't find anybody. Two, nobody wanted to touch me because of the amount of damage I had, and not a lot of people survived. Back then, it was 3% or something like that. They actually survived, and many of these people died because of they were treating him for something other than the dissection, and it actually made it worse. Somehow I survived, and the cardiologist I had at the time that they discharged me under his office, I was his primary. He was my primary, uh, basically, because nobody wants a guy that's going to die. At least that's what they thought on their service, because it makes you look bad, right? Doctors do not need a big death count. Plus, I was really messed up. My whole system was uh, very stripped out. But, and then, I had me to deal with. What do I say? I had me. Well, for the first 3 years, I just did what everybody told me. I was scared to death. Didn't smoke cigars. I didn't drink whiskey. Didn't overexert myself. There was 9 steps to go, 9 or 10. I would do 5 at a time. I didn't pick up a grandchild for 3 years. I got 10 of them. They'd climb up on my lap. I basically lived in the basement of my mother-in-law's house because it was all on one level. The bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a living room, and then a TV room. It was a big house, so the basement apartment was really nice. Plus, it was on a, where you had big windows on a slope, so you had a lot of natural light. I think I always said that that environment saved me. I couldn't be in my house. I was in an environment of people who had an invested interest in me. Not always good, and not always bad, but you take the good with the bad when you're the guy who can't do everything. And that lasted for 3.5 years, and I got involved with a GP, a real GP, and then I got involved with a surgeon in Albany, and he brought in all these wonderful people, these diagnostic things I never heard of, CTs and MRIs and echocardiograms and ultrasound. I mean, it was a whole different world. This guy owned a building and he had surgical suites up on the fourth floor. He was part of this big conglomerate medical unit, all run by doctors. And he was the head of the Vascular Association, which I didn't understand at the time what that meant, but I guess it meant it was pretty good. And he sold back together again, like Humpty Dumpty. He stented my neck and then my clavicle and then my root to uh, thoracic to abdominal, both kidneys, iliac, the two femorals. I mean, I may not have any more uh, organs to donate, but I got plenty of parts. I even have two tungsten knee joints, and so I've got some equipment. I'm worth some money. At least what they charge the insurance company. Insurance company pay. Yeah, I'm worth a lot of money. So that took about close to 5 years to get all those stents in and re-stent, and at the time the stents were real stiff. Now they're very flexible, so that made another problem. But you go with the good with the bad, and and I tried everything to get back to being a chef. After trying to work in a couple of kitchens and realizing I didn't have the stamina, and then I tried all these consulting businesses and insurance appraisals, and everything associated with the food industry, right? But I didn't have the stamina for it. And finally, 3 years ago, I decided, I'm never going to be a chef again. So talk about somebody who's a real rockhead. It took me a long time to give up on my dream. And my grandchildren started to explain video games to me, which was interesting. But you had to learn how to, turn the computer on and plug everything in, and the mechanics of it, and then how to bring up the program. You understand? I barely knew how to work my smart cell phone, and that was only because my daughter taught me most of the stuff on it. And then I watched the instructional videos on YouTube. So that's just barely 3 years ago. And 2 years ago, I turned my first real computer, independent computer on. I mean, I worked with POS systems called point of sale, and I had use of computers like auditing computers that did the register as opposed to the sales. All those things were great, but they were all one or two buttons. And I never did the input. I always had somebody to do the input, so even they'll punch the button, I just get the report. So I did have exposure, but I wasn't the guy running it. I watched people run it, and I was always in amazement. And then I learned 2 years ago. The funniest thing is the grandchild that was helping me at the time wouldn't tell me how to turn the computer on. I lifted the lid and I'm looking at all these keys and I'm going, what in the hell is this? Think about it. You're 71 years old and you're trying to learn the systems of the future, not even of the present. I mean, the internet is way ahead of us. Always has been, as far as I'm concerned. So I learned how to turn the computer on. I learned how to use it. I learned how to open apps and download things. I have, I think I have somewhere around 9 3 subject spiral notebooks full of notes. Click control this for it to do that. I mean, I literally, if there was 3 keystrokes I wrote down, you want to do this? These are the 3 keystrokes you have to do. The 3 keys you have to push, or whatever. I mean, it was a very rudimentary style of learning the computer. A lot of hit and misses. Plus, then you have to remember I have fat finger syndrome. My hands are, literally, my dad would call them meat hooks. So I can cover 2 or 3 keys, no problem. And if I'm really not paying attention, I'm going to hit a fourth one. So sometimes I look up from the keyboard at what I've typed and I think to myself, now this is truly, you know, nobody's going to figure this one out. I've already coded it. Nobody's going to understand it. So I got to go back and retype it, which is pretty funny. And every once in a while, one of those get out because I don't really look at it good enough. And that's, whole comedy routine. You have to understand I'm part of a group of friends. They go to Dunkin' Donuts and breakfast. That's our ritual in the morning. And every time we get together, we throw $5 in a kitty each person. So we have this rainy day fund or birthday get drunk fun. But that's another story. It's just how old people get together and communicate our distrust for anybody under 60 years old. That's a joke, by the way. Ah, it was a rough weekend. A lot going on. I overdid it. So actually took today off. I was like a slug all day. I mean, I got so many phone calls that I didn't answer that I sent to voicemail that my voicemail is full now. I have to go clean it out. I am basically 73-year-old guy who talks to you from personal experience. I was there. I didn't read it in a book. I didn't watch a video on it. I didn't talk to somebody else. I was there. Won't talk about anything before, my awakening, my consciousness at 5 or 6 years old, because I wasn't there. And I sure as hell don't know what the future's going to bring. I mean, just in the last 2 months that I've been doing this podcasting, my whole view has changed about the internet and the interaction of people and the future. Really, the future interaction is I'm not going to be here for it. So it's one of those things that I can imagine what it might be like. You see, and it changes so many times. I mean, Josh is like got a whip in his hand. I got to go on X and I got to go on YouTube and I got to go on Reddit every day. I mean, like my poor fingers are just down to the nubs, but he doesn't care. As long as he gets his likes and comments, he's happy. Well, ladies and germs, I appreciate you. Like, subscribe, comment, get back to me. This was fun. I love answering these questions about me because I like to talk about me. And for the last 8 minutes, we'll talk to Josh. So, Joshua, how was your weekend? Did your team win?
Oh, I did. It was it was a pretty decent weekend, I think. I was quite busy.
You're real low. Can barely hear you.
Am I low? I got a prompt from my machine there that said I had to turn my something low or high. Is that better?
Yep, that's much
All
better.
right. It's interesting that you say that you didn't answer your phone and that your voicemail filled up. This is a generational thing. I don't know anybody who answers their phone anymore.
It's primary communication device for us at 70
Yeah.
because we always use it for it. It's why I always have a pad and pen in my back pocket because that was our memory. Because maybe you might make a agreement to meet 2 Saturdays from now to hang a barn door. We got to have some way to remember that. It's just the mechanics of it. Now, I understand you can put it in your calendar now, you can put alerts on it. And I'm getting there. My calendar really is covered with things. Now, I got to qualify that about 60% of it is done by other people. Like
Is that
when,
60% of the activities in the calendar?
yeah, well, people will grab my phone and they'll bring up a date and put in there that so and so's birthday and, save it. And, you know, so yeah, about 60% of the stuff that gets on my calendar isn't done by me.
Hey, that's a way. That works.
And it works really well, but I have to get more independent and do it myself. So what I've been trying to do is all the notifications from PAD and from the heart and aortic dissections, and then of course uh, aortic hope and St. Jude. Every time something comes through, they're going to have a video presentation or a doctor or something. It goes right into my calendar because it's my memory. But the phone is my communication because I can call up my friends and say, look, this is my problem. And somebody will know what I'm talking about. And if they don't come over and help, they'll talk me through it, or they'll talk one of my kids, grandchildren through it while I sit there. It's a primary communication for us in our 70s, 80s. Or we use it like Captain Kirk used his uh, tricorder, flip it open. But I know nobody answers their phone. I I barely call people anymore. You know why? Because if I send them a text, it's more apt to get responded to than a voicemail because people don't like to click out of their phone into their voicemail. Isn't that crazy?
Well, it's more like, oh man, I haven't checked my voicemail in 7 years. How far
Yeah.
back do I go?
And then the other thing I use a lot is emails. Try to answer. I don't make it, but I try to answer most people that write me, especially the interesting ones. Um, but I notice, like my grandchildren, I may see them texting on it, but I never see them talking on their phone. They they get on we have all these video game machines, Xbox and all the way back to Wii, and we have the original Atari that I got, but I put it away because I don't want to get it broken because it still works. You just blow in the cartridge, bang it down a couple times, and it works. That's the secret of playing our Atari games. You got to blow in the cartridge.
You know, that same secret pushed into the Nintendo era too.
Is that right?
Yeah, blow the dust out and then kind of like squeeze, push, and drop it down just right. It'll run.
Well, so this weekend, yesterday, 2 hours on the computer, they tell me everything's ready to be executed. Upgrade everything to premium. I'm getting Elon's web browser satellite system. What else is? They left me this note, so I'm just reading off it as this is all the things they did. They cleaned out all the spam and all those boxes that collect things. Um, so I'm learning, is what I'm saying. I'm 73 and I'm still learning, and I'm enjoying it, and it meets my criteria of what I need because of my limited mobility. Obviously, I can't be out there, you know, running with a microphone after somebody in a marathon, but I can set up things and have conversations. Uh, and people are amazing. They'll come up and tell you, well, I can't tell you when the last time I had a conversation. It's usually a text or 4 sentences, or if I'm in a meeting, I'm falling asleep within the first 20 minutes. And if you put me on a Zoom or team meeting, I'm asleep in 5 minutes. I got to make sure my microphone's off so nobody hears me snoring. It's just, it's the difference in the generations. What you've been exposed to it from the day you're born. Obviously, you're going to be more comfortable with. That's why nobody drives my truck. Standard, crank up windows, you know, power assist. Power assist. What that means is you better have strong arms to turn the wheel. Not power steering, power assist. But Cooper never complains. He has not complained one time. He'll give me a sideline glance if I don't have his favorite blanket spread out on the passenger seat just right. He'll look at me like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why isn't my blanket nice and flat? Why is there a ridge in the middle of my blanket? But that's another story. All right, gang. I so appreciate you. I'm glad that you asked me the questions and I got a chance to set the timeline and give you a little insights. Please write some more. I enjoyed this. Uh, well, for Josh and I, we say like, subscribe, share, comment, make sure the bell is up and ringing. I appreciate each and every one of you. All God's blessings. I I repeat my thanks to Josh because without him I wouldn't have made this step this last 4 months. We got 2 more months before we have to make critical decisions, which is a business term that nobody uses anymore. We just throw more money after bad. All right, gang. God bless. Tom Noetner, the conversationalist, and we're out.